After a string of setbacks, the spotlight has fallen on the poor performance of the Russian armed forces, despite their leader's upbeat assessment almost 7 months since the invasion of Ukraine. Russia threw its best troops into the meat grinder in the early stages of its war on Ukraine, a military analyst has said. And Vladimir Putin's insistence that the so-called special operation is going to plan is making things even worse, Simon Miles, an assistant professor at Duke University's Sanford School of Public Policy, has said. Ukrainian forces have scored a string of successes in recent days, with Kyiv claiming to have retaken vast swaths of territory in the northeast of the country since the start of September. The UK Ministry of Defence earlier this week reported that Russian soldiers, including those from 1st Guards Tank Army, have fled the Kharkiv region in the face of a fierce Ukrainian onslaught. Nevertheless, the Russian president, apparently in denial, continues to insist things are on track, telling a Kremlin parliament meeting, "Everybody should know that largely speaking, we haven't even yet started anything in earnest." Professor Miles told the Business Insider website, "A lot of these units are not exhibiting what we would call military professionalism, including cutting and running. We saw the best Russian military performance in the first few weeks of the war when the Russian military took its best units and sent huge numbers on basically suicide missions. They took the cream of the crop and threw them into the meat grinder, and now they are left with the remains." In a clear indication of the Putin regime's desperation, Professor Miles said his government was seeking to implement a stopgap solution, offering professional soldiers a year's average salary for 3-month service. Initially, such an approach had worked, with Russia enjoying its best successes at the start of the war, Professor Miles said, but the longer the conflict wore on, the more the problems have become apparent. He explained, "Lots of people signed on for one round. But as summer gives way to fall and fall gives way to winter, I would doubt that given how disastrously things have gone in the last few days especially, that many people will sign up for spending winter in a Ukrainian trench. Combat is the most physically and mentally taxing thing a human can subject themselves to. Units that have been in it for 6 months, it is just exhausting. One obvious solution would be to bring in conscription, although such a move would require Russia to declare a state of war, something Putin is reluctant to do," Professor Miles pointed out. He said, "Continuing to refuse to mobilize is denying the Russian military the resource it needs most, which is personnel. To declare mass mobilization, to declare formal war would be an explicit declaration that this isn't working." With respect to Putin's mindset, he added, "He's insistent on maintaining this narrative that everything is going great, which no reasonable person would believe." Professor Miles' remarks echo those of Brendan Carney, the former chief of staff with the U.S. Marine Corps Forces Europe and Germany, who last month told the BBC, "The Russians have quickly shown that their military is really quite honestly, borderline useless." Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy vowed to lead Ukraine to victory in its war against Russia as he visited recaptured towns yesterday. Mr. Zelenskyy on Wednesday made his surprise trip to Izium, until 4 days ago Russia's main bastion and logistics hub in the Kharkiv region, where he watched as the Ukrainian flag was raised in front of the charred city council building. In a social media post, Mr. Zelenskyy said, "Our blue-yellow flag is already flying into occupied Izium. And it will be so in every Ukrainian city and village." Earlier on Wednesday, he handed out medals to soldiers who freed the Balaklia area, another town retaken in recent days. Citizens and local police told reporters civilians were killed during months of Russian occupation. Russia denies deliberately targeting civilians. The Ukrainian president says his army has liberated roughly 3,100 square miles of territory so far this month, almost equivalent to the island of Cyprus. When Russian forces withdrew from the areas around Kyiv earlier this year, they left behind horrors including the rape and executions of Ukrainian civilians. A fresh wave of atrocities has been committed in Ukraine, discovered following a sweeping counteroffensive which liberated towns and cities across Kharkiv Oblast. It comes after Zelensky's forces recaptured huge swaths of land in the besieged country. A Ukrainian official has said that at least 1,000 bodies have been found in the liberated city of Izium. Ukrainian official Anton Heroshenko accompanied Ukrainian President Zelenskyy to the city of Izium. He told the BBC that Ukrainian forces had found at least 1,000 bodies there in a tragedy even worse than the one in Bucha. Maxim Strelnik, a deputy of Izium City Council, said that Russian forces occupying the city had committed war crimes and tried to hide them. He claimed that the number of dead likely increased after Russian soldiers plundered pharmacies and destroyed medical facilities in the town. Scenes from Izium show residents running towards Ukrainian soldiers, crying from relief that Russian forces had evacuated the city. Mark Savchuk, a Ukrainian journalist and coordinator at the Ukrainian Volunteer Journalist Initiative, has contacts in the Ukrainian armed forces. He told Express.co.uk that he had not heard about the number of dead in the city but claimed that such a large number wouldn't surprise him as Russians execute Ukrainians, left and right, for being so-called spies. He said, "There hasn't been a single place where I didn't hear that there was rape going on, that there was robbery going on." He added, "What would stop them from doing that? Are there police or some board that would say, oh, you can't rape the women? Obviously not. That's exactly why you see people running towards the Ukrainian military with tears in their eyes. If people were treated well, you wouldn't see this reaction. Why on earth would a person run towards a tank with tears in his eyes? It's because he saw up close these horrible things before Izium was liberated." Izium, in northeastern Ukraine, was a key Russian logistics hub and had been occupied since April by Russian forces. The city now has an estimate 10,000 residents, compared around 50,000 before the war. Its infrastructure has been devastated in the conflict. There have so far not been any official accounts of war crimes taking place in the city, although Ukrainian law enforcement officials have reportedly begun investigations there. At least one instance of torture by electrocution has been reported in the nearby town of Balaklia. Balaklia was liberated by Ukrainian forces on September 8, just days before Izium was abandoned by Russian forces who feared encirclement. Yesterday, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy visited Izium and presided over a flag-raising ceremony which saw the Ukrainian flag fly over the city once again. In his nightly address, Mr. Zelenskyy said that Ukrainian forces were solidifying their hold on more than 8,000 square kilometers, more than 3,000 square miles, of liberated territory. He vowed to take back all of the remaining Ukrainian territory occupied by Russian forces. Thank you very much for watching. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button so you can be alerted to our next video. We'll see you again soon on Warzone.